So hopefully you watched the video I posted for Monday to conclude a Midsummer Night's Dream. We will, for a few moments today, go back to Act 5, Scene 1, after we start discussing Hamlet, because I'm going to draw a connection between something said by one of the characters early in Scene 1 with a fairly long speech by Duke Theseus. But we're starting Hamlet. Hamlet's a revenge tragedy. Your introduction talks about this. I'm not going to go into it in great detail. Revenge tragedy is an ancient genre, goes back to ancient Rome, gets revived during Shakespeare's day, late 1580s, 1590s. Seneca's plays, the great Roman revenge dramatic tragedist. I'm at a loss for words. Roman playwright who wrote revenge tragedies. His works were translated, published, and produced on stage in the late 1580s, and then some English authors began writing their own revenge tragedies. Thomas Kidd is mentioned in your introduction. And Shakespeare takes up the genre with Hamlet. By the time Shakespeare turns around to write Hamlet in 1600, or the very late 1590s when he's actually writing it, it's no longer in vogue. It's no longer, the new hip thing, so to speak. It's kind of on the downward trajectory. We're not sure why. Well, we don't know why Shakespeare writes any of the things he actually writes or when he does. But the late 1590s, Shakespeare's imagination, let's say, kind of starts to take a darker turn. And beginning around 1599, 1600, he writes a series of big, major tragedies. Hamlet, Othello, Lear, etc. Just downers, pretty much all of them. It is interesting to note, his son dies in 1596 at the age of 11. Okay, so that would, I would imagine, have a pretty profound effect on him. All right? So revenge tragedy. The way the genre usually works, again, this is from your introduction, before the play begins, before a revenge tragedy actually opens, someone has been murdered. It's not necessarily the case that it's known that the death was a murder. Sometimes it appears the death was accidental or natural causes, as for example in the case with Hamlet, okay? But then within the course of the play, once the play immediately opens and they're talking about the dead person, a ghost appears in most of them, okay? The vast majority. A ghost appears and tells a surviving family member how he or she died and gives the surviving family member or members a charge. Avenge my death. Pay him back. Okay? And then usually the course of the play is how that family member exacts revenge. In the Senecan versions, they're very there's just bodies piled up all over the place. They're pretty stark, pretty severe. Shakespeare's isn't as much, though at the end of Act 5, we are going to see a number of bodies on the stage. All right? Big difference between Shakespeare's day and the Greek period, that we saw with Oedipus and Antigone. Oedipus and Antigone, deaths occur off the stage. They're not seen. In Seneca, for 500 years after Sophocles' writing, in Senecan tragedies, no. It's okay to slaughter people on stage. They're much more like the United States in that sense, or modern culture. Shakespeare's day also, all right? A couple of Shakespeare's plays, you have people's eyes being gouged out on the stage, in King Lear, for example, and other things like that. But Hamlet isn't simply a revenge tragedy. It goes far beyond and above the genre. In other words, it's like the blood and gore, or for the people down here, But then the meaty intellectual stuff that's on the stage is for the people up here in the galleries who are going to sit there and think about what does it mean to be or not to be. You know, those down here are thinking it's more along the lines of to eat or not to eat. You know, can I afford the penny to go see a play as opposed to eating tonight, kind of a thing, right? So, trying to think if there's anything. There is a Germanic source, possibly for, well, all of Shakespeare's plays have sources, okay? Most of them we know what they are, some of them we don't. We don't know what the immediate source is for Hamlet. It doesn't survive, apparently. It gets referred to in the scholarly criticism, didn't think to mention this to my first class, as the Hamlet. And doesn't mean like you're talking, you go, not that kind of The you are, it's actually from a place name in Mesopotamia, ancient Iraq, okay? And it's kind of like the first city. So the first Hamlet. We do know there is a dramatic story. It survives in a work of literature called the Gesta Danorum, History of the Danes, by a Germanic writer named Saxo Grammaticus, who was writing in the 12th, 13th century. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly. Who told a story about a guy named Ambleth. Ambleth. I'm pretty sure movie came out, this is 23, either last summer or the summer prior, called The Northman with Stellan Skarsgård. And one of the characters, that might be his character, is named Ambleth. It's essentially the story of Hamlet, okay? We don't know that Shakespeare knew the Saxo Grammaticus source, okay? I'm almost positive about that. But there was probably something that lies behind Shakespeare's version here, okay? These are all issues, themes, ideas that will come up in the play. We'll add more as we go along. But one of the most important, you come up with whatever synonym you want. Watching, observing, spying, looking. Another word that is used is mark, which means to take note of, to see and kind of grapple with is going to come up a lot. This is really important in this play. Okay? Hamlet is going to be called by Ophelia the observed of all observers. That is, the most watched of all the watchers. Okay? So let's look at the dramatis personae. You've got Claudius, king of Denmark, Hamlet, son to the late and nephew to the present king. The late king was also named Hamlet. Okay? So you have Hamlet Sr., Hamlet Jr. Hamlet Sr. is dead when the play opens. All right? Polonius, Lord Chamberlain, that is right-hand man, chief advisor to the king. Horatio, friend of Hamlet. Laertes, son of Polonius. And then you have a variety of courtiers. Voltimand and Cornelius aren't going to be important. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern will be important. They're also friends of Hamlet. Notice your dramatis personae doesn't list them, however, as friend to Hamlet. And the reason for that is because they become spies on Hamlet. But courtiers, another way you could put that is suck-ups to the king. Okay? Ostrich, a gentleman, a few others. Marcellus and Bernardo, they're officers. They're also friends of Hamlet. But they're not friends like Horatio is. Horatio's Hamlet's BFF. I mean, this is the person Hamlet shares kind of everything with. Okay? Several others. You got a couple of gravediggers who I think are erroneously named clowns or titled clowns. They're not clowns. Why call them clowns? Because these aren't guys who work with their minds. What do? Day in and day out. They dig graves. They're ditch diggers. Okay? And they are kind of funny. They're comedic. They're not intentionally comedic. They don't mean to be. They use the wrong words all the time. What are called malaprops or malapropisms. Fortinbras, Prince of Norway, a captain, some others. Gertrude and Ophelia. Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, married to the current king. Who was she married to before? The dead king, who is the brother of the current king. So she's married her dead husband's brother. Okay? Should add this, should throw this out there. And Ophelia, daughter to Polonius. Hamlet, the play, is set within a Christian society. We're going to hear very early on, one of the characters is going to talk about our dear Savior's birth. That's not Odin or Thor, it's Jesus. Okay? It is set within a very Christian society with Christian traditions, Christian ideology. All right? Within that context, however, there are competing forms of Christianity, or competing ideologies of Christianity, if you want. Why? Because when Shakespeare writes the play, there are competing forms of Christianity. And Shakespeare is born in a period of competing Christianities. Catholicism, Protestantism. And at some point, I'm going to take a segue, follow a rabbit trail to talk about the Protestant Reformation and some of the ideology there, because it's really important. This is Shakespeare's most religious play. I mean, it's thoroughly Christian, but it's competing Christianities between Protestant belief system, salvation by grace, faith, etc., and the Catholic belief system. Okay? For example, purgatory is going to come up big in here. Not labeled as such, however. So you gotta understand, Senecan revenge tragedies, they're not within the Christian tradition. Even though Christianity is around when Seneca is writing. It's set within the pagan system. All right? So the religious significance is not that great in Seneca. It is in Hamlet. You can't not deal with all the religious stuff in Hamlet. Okay? So look how the play begins. We get our setting. Elsinore, platform before the castle. Why aren't we told where Elsinore is? It's in Denmark. Okay? It may be the name of the actual castle, or it may be the name of the town where the castle is located. That part's not explicitly clear. But they're on a platform before the castle. And the platform, that's what this crude drawing is, that's the battlements. Okay? So the way many castles are constructed, I didn't draw this in my first class, is you have a wall, and then within the wall you've got this building, okay? Out here, at some point, you have a moat, drawbridge and everything, you've got a courtyard, and you have another kind of wall here, okay? But this is a big wall. So they're probably on a platform out in front, but that platform is the crenellated, you come here, shoot your arrows, dive behind this when they're shooting their arrows back at you and such. So these guys are standing on this platform. Look at how the play begins. Who's there? It's a question. What does this kind of question imply? Okay, notice we're told, enter Bernardo and Francisco, 2 sentinels. What is a sentinel?
Like a guard.
Louder?
Like a guard.
A guard. Okay. Give me another word. Guard's good. What are you doing if you're standing sentinel?
Watching.
Because guarding implies I'm protecting this thing. Watching implies I'm looking out there. Watching, observing, seeing. All right? Who's there? The question means something's there. All right? Who's there? Nay, answer me. So Bernardo asks who's there. Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself. They don't enter the stage from the same door. This is, here's the globe. Here's the stage. The tiny house is back here. This is the door. This is the door. One comes out this way. One comes out the other way. They don't, within the fiction of a play, see each other. It's winter, we're going to be told, because it's really cold. Okay? It's nighttime, so it's dark. You're talking Northern Europe, Baltic Sea area. Wintertime, it's often foggy. So they can't see very clearly. Nay, answer me, stand and unfold yourself. And Bernardo says, long live the king. Probably code. I'm one of you. Okay? Bernardo? And I think the implication is, as they're speaking, they're getting closer to each other. And the fog kind of dissipates. There wouldn't have been fog in the production of this in Shakespeare's day, obviously. Didn't have fog machines. You could do it today. Most productions don't. Okay? You come most carefully upon your hour, meaning you're cutting it close. It's like 1 minute to midnight. Bernardo leaves at midnight. Okay? Francisco leaves at midnight. 'Tis now struck 12. My time has arrived. Time for you to go home. For this relief, much than, 'tis bitter cold. Have you had quiet guard? That is, have you seen anything? Have you noticed anything? Have you heard anything? Not a mouse stirring. Probably where Samuel Clemens gets the line for The Night Before Christmas. Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. So, Bernardo says, if you meet Horatio and Marcellus, the rivals of my watch, bid them make haste. Okay? So, Horatio and Marcellus come in. So we are going to have 3 men watching. Apparently, for some reason, the watch time from whatever hour until midnight does not require 3. But from midnight on, it does. It's the deepest, darkest time of the night and such. Okay? So, they're welcomed. Francisco leaves, goes off to bed. So we have Bernardo, Marcellus, and Horatio. And Marcellus asks, line 21, has this thing appeared again tonight? Notice, he doesn't say, has this apparition appeared again tonight? Why? Because that would be kind of a redundant. Apparition and appear, they both relate to the same word. Okay? Has this thing, what kind of thing? We don't know. Bernardo, I've seen nothing. Horatio says 'tis but our fantasy. Now, are we told that Francisco has seen this thing? Francisco's out. He's gone now. No, because the conversation doesn't come up while Francisco is there. But Bernardo and Marcellus have seen this thing, whatever it is. That's probably why the play begins with the, who's there? I've heard something. Maybe barely seen something. Horatio says 'tis but our fantasy. What's meant by fantasy? It's our imagination playing tricks with us. Have you ever been in the kind of fog that sometimes swirls? Well, every now and then it can swirl and you kind of go, I think I just saw something. And then it swirls away. So, Horatio says 'tis but our fantasy, top of 1240, and will not let belief take hold of him. touching this dreaded sight twice seen of us. A theme that Shakespeare plays with again and again and again in both the plays and the sonnets is reality versus appearance. What's the reality of a situation or thing versus how does it appear? Okay? Or what is real and what is not real is another way of looking at that. Notice Marcellus says, Horatio will not let belief take hold of him regarding this thing that we've seen twice now. When have they seen it? The previous night and the night before that. Why won't he let belief take hold of him? Notice it says that it doesn't say he will not believe it. Well, go back to the good man is hard to find. Why is the misfit the misfit? He tells us why he's the misfit. Jesus thrown everything off balance, he says. What does that have to do with anything? What does Jesus throwing everything off balance have to do with them crashing their car and such? Because the misfit says, if I'd have been there when Jesus was around, he would what? He would know. He wouldn't just have to believe. He would know. You know, St. Thomas the disciple says, unless I put my finger in the print in his hand and put my hand in his side, I will not believe. 8 days later, they're all together again. They're in the room, doors are locked. Thomas gets a tap on his shoulder. And Jesus does this. He says, come on, you said, like he was there before, just couldn't be seen. And Thomas says, my Lord and my God, blessed are you because you have believed and seen. More blessed are those who don't see and believe. Blessed are you who've seen and believed, not believed and seen. Okay? The misfit doesn't see. Therefore, his mind, he can't believe. That's essentially the exact same thing that Marcellus is saying here about Horatio. For Horatio, the modern phrase we have is his kind of guiding intellectual lodestar. Seeing is believing. In other words, empiricism, what's called also logical positivism. Logical positivism. It has to be proved in order to be real. Okay? That's why I've asked him to come along with us. He won't believe us unless he sees it for himself. Horatio, it will not appear. Why won't it appear? According to Horatio's mindset. It doesn't exist. Again, I'm going to play the 2-year-old. Why doesn't it exist? His mental framework doesn't allow for it. Because what is the thing they've seen? 5-10 lines later, it appears. It's a ghost. His mental mindset doesn't allow for the existence of ghosts. Why? They're outside the normal experience of people. It will not appear. Sit down a while. In other words, let us teach you. And let us once again assail your ears. Assail? That's a military term. If you're going to assail something, what are you doing? You're going to beat the living daylights out of it. You're going to assault it. So we're going to assault your ears until what? Until you believe us. Okay, come on, speak. Last night of all, when yon same star, he says, and so he points to the star that's westward from the pole, hath made its course to illumine that part of heaven where now it burns. So last night, at this exact moment, Marcellus and myself, the bell then beating, and the ghost appears. Nice little setup there. Okay? Peace, break thee off. Look where it comes again. In the same figure, that is, in the same appearance, like the king that's dead. What's like? Close to. Similar to. It's a simile, right? Like the dead king. He doesn't say in the same figure of the dead king. He doesn't say it is the dead king. It looks like the dead king. Okay? Marcellus, thou art a scholar. Speak to it, Horatio. Scholar. He goes to university. He's a scholar student with Hamlet at the University of Wittenberg. Wittenberg. Okay? It's going to come up later in the play. What he means by thou art a scholar is, you know Latin. Speak to it. Why? Because Latin is the language of the church. And especially when you get into things like exorcisms, putting down spirits, you speak to it in Latin. You say, get the hell away from here, evil spirit, in Latin. So get us the hell us away, etc. Bernardo, looks are not like the king. Doesn't that look like the king? Mark it. Take note, Horatio. That's what it means. It doesn't mean go put a mark on him. It means burn that image into your mind. Horatio, most like the king. It harrows me with fear and wonder. And then you have a stupid gloss. Look at the gloss for harrows. Lacerates the feelings. What the hell does that even mean? Feelings can't be lacerated. Because to lacerate means to do what? It's like what my doctor did, my arm. You cut something. Okay. What does it really mean? Scares him to death. That's what harrows means. Harrows me with wonder. There's a term used in the church, the harrowing of hell. And it's, according to the ideology of the Christian church, during the 3 days Jesus' body was in the tomb, Jesus' soul, so to speak, harrowed hell, Hades. Not hell, fire, and brimstone, not that kind of hell, just the place of the dead. What in the Old Testament is called Sheol. It's where everybody goes. The Greek version is Hades. Okay? It's not fire and destruction, brimstone, punishment, hell. Big, huge distinction. He harrowed hell, meaning he just went down to the place of the dead and said, all right, all of you who are looking forward to me, follow me. Going back to Adam and Eve. And everyone who looked for the coming of them, they followed him out of hell. So what does it mean? It harrows me, that is, it cuts me to the soul. Okay? With fear and wonder. It would be spoke to. Well, how do we know that? Is the ghost going? You got a gloss, it would be spoke to. A ghost could not speak until spoken to. That is, it wishes to be spoken to. This is the popular consciousness, popular mythology thing that the ghost can't speak unless it's invited to. So, Horatio asked the ghost a question. What art thou that usurps this time of night, together with that fair and warlike form in which the majesty of buried Denmark did sometimes march? By heaven I charge thee. Okay? Two things. What's usurp mean? To usurp something? To take it over. Notice, it's illegal. I don't mean illegal against the law. I mean, you're doing something wrongly. It'd be like one of you standing up saying, get out of here, Sherman, I'm going to teach this class from now on. I'd probably go, fine, okay, I'll just go home. Okay? That would be usurping that authority. So two things are being usurped. What are they? What art thou that usurpst this time of night? How is whatever the thing is taking over the time of night? Let's let that one sit for a moment, because the second one's a lot easier. Together with that fair and warlike form in which the majesty of buried Denmark did sometimes march. What's the second thing that has been usurped? The appearance of the dead king of Denmark. The question is asserting or implying at the very least. This isn't really the fair and warlike form of Denmark. In other words, it's not really the dead king. It is taking the appearance of the dead king. And I think it is Peter, in the first or second letter of Peter, talks about how the devil can appear as an angel of light. It can take on appearances of things. For what purpose? To pull one down to hell, so to speak. Okay, so now let's go back to the first question. How does it usurp this time of night? Popular mythology. It's at this time of the evening that ghosts were supposed to, not supposed they ought to, supposed thought to, come out of the graves and kind of wander the world. A Christmas Carol. Anybody familiar? Three spirits are going to visit Ebenezer Scrooge beginning when? 1 a.m. It's 1 a.m. Okay? Dickens knew this play, obviously. You could say that is a source for Dickens, but they're both playing upon this old idea in English kind of popular mythology. It's usurping the time of night because where do ghosts belong? Where do souls belong once the body is dead?
Not Earth.
Not here. Not Earth, right? Otherwise, what would we be seeing? All the time, everywhere, always. Right? There'd be disembodied spirits just everywhere. And maybe we just don't have the right lenses with which to see them. It's a big trope in fantasy and literature and such. If you learn to see correctly, you can see, these souls that aren't really gone to the place of death or the place of the dead. So that's how it's usurped this time of night. Shouldn't be here. We saw that similar idea alluded to, by the way, in Midsummer Night's Dream with the introduction of Puck and how, Puck plays with people, etc. So, and then he says, by heaven I charge thee. In other words, in the name of God I command you, speak. Notice, no effect. Maybe Horatio isn't a true believer, Marcellus, it is offended. How do we know? That's a stage direction, by the way. See, it stalks away. And if it's a really poor production, think, Bottom et al. Putting this on. Look, it's offended. And then the next guy says, see, it stalks away. And the person playing Ghost goes, oh, so I'm supposed to leave now. That's my cue. Stay, speak, I charge thee, speak. 'Tis gone and will not answer. Bernardo, how now, Horatio? Come on, fess up. Now what do you say? You tremble and look pale. Is not this something more than fantasy? That is, isn't this something more than just our imaginations? What think you on it? What does he mean? What think you on it? Riddle me this. Explain this away. Okay? Pause there. Turn to, if you have your books, Act 5, Scene 1, Midsummer Night's Dream. The opening speech. If you watch the lecture I posted for Monday, then you heard this in a much longer, probably too long, form. So the scene opens, the act opens, with the wedding party. Okay? Lovers have been united the way they're supposed to be united. Everybody's back in Athens. The woods are gone, etc. And the chaos that the wood implies is now all order is restored. And Hippolytus says, "'Tis strange, my Theseus, that these lovers speak of." That is, that means what? What these lovers are talking of. It's strange. What does she mean by strange? Unexplicable. Can't understand it. Okay? Theseus, more strange than true. More unexplicable, more odd, more mysterious than true. And by true, he means it doesn't conform with reality. In other words, it's not real. See, something that's strange, it's not something that you can understand. And a lot of people say, well, if it's not something I can understand, then it isn't real. So he goes on and gives, I think, one of the best speeches in Shakespeare. "I never may believe these antic fables nor these fairy toys." And notice how I pronounce the word antique. It's spelled antique, our modern English pronunciation. In Shakespeare's day, that word is pronounced both antic, like crazy, frantic, and antique, old. So, a crazy wives' tale, fable, or old, fairy tale kind of thing. "I never may believe these antic fables nor these fairy toys." That is, these stories about fairies. Why can't he? I think the implication is because he hasn't seen them. Lovers and madmen. So, two kinds of beings. Lovers and madmen have such seething brains, such shaping fantasies that apprehend more than cool reason ever comprehends. Lovers and madmen. Madmen are what? Crazy. Loony, we say. Loony referring to they're under the influence of the moon. Okay? Shakespeare, through Theseus, saying lovers and insane people are the same. How so? They're seething brains. Okay? What's seething? What does to seethe something means? Literally. It is a verb. It means to boil. If you are seething mad, back off. Okay? Have you ever had any of you ever had a really high temperature? I don't mean like 101, 102. I mean like 104, 105. Second grade, Hong Kong flu, 1968. I had it. I didn't worry about COVID. It had nothing. I was out of school for like 3 or 4 weeks with the flu, and my temperature got to 105. I had the best dreams, man. I mean, you don't need acid when you can get a temperature of 105. You'll see things, you'll apprehend things. Okay? Touch and go there for a bit. The brain does what when it gets really hot? It produces images. You hallucinate. That's what he's getting at with seething brains. They have such seething, boiling brains, such shaping fantasies. You've got a gloss there for fantasies, imaginations. And notice, by putting the shaping before fantasies, what's he telling us the fantasies do? They give shape. They shape things up here. Okay? And the fantasies apprehend more than cool reason ever comprehends. How do they apprehend? What does it mean to apprehend? It's literally to reach out and grab. Okay? The fantasies do that by giving shape. To what? Something that literally has no Shape. Define the shape of an idea. Yeah, what kind of stupid question is that? You can't define the shape of an idea. It doesn't have a shape unless the idea is of a shape, like a circle. Okay? So, lovers and madmen have fantasies that do what? They create a shape of something that cool reason never comprehends. What's the difference between apprehension and comprehension? Apprehension means you can grab it. Comprehension means you can understand it. What's the difference between grabbing and understanding? Understanding is like, the old Greek myth of Atlas, standing under the world, holding the world on his shoulders. Well, the world is the thing apprehended. The understanding of that is, what's the image mean? Yeah, it's a bit different. We can have an idea and not know what that idea means. J.K. Rowling, on a train from Manchester to London, at one point in time, was just J.K. Rowling on a train from Manchester to London. And then 1 second later, she has an idea of a boy he discovers on his 11th birthday that his parents were murdered by the most foul, dark wizard who ever lived, and that he was after him. Where did the idea come from? More importantly, why did she get that idea and not me? Because I'd be a billionaire today if I weren't lazy. She got that idea and she went from being penniless, on welfare, to literally within 10 years being a millionaire, within 15 years being a billionaire, within 1991 to 2007, 16 years being richer than the freaking Queen of England. Because an idea popped into her mind. J.R.R. Tolkien, one morning, grading entrance exams to Oxford, sitting in his study, has a blue book of a student's essay. I've held this thing in my hands. And he turns the page and there's a blank page. In a pencil, he writes, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. What the hell's a hobbit? He had no idea. And he went on grading the rest of the student's essay. But that question nagged him. What's a hobbit? And he starts writing a story and tells the story to his kids. Starts reading it to his friends. And they're like, college, you got to publish this. And he becomes internationally famous egghead, because of his Beowulf scholarship, author. Where'd that idea come from? His brain apprehended, it gave shape more than cool reason comprehended. Because cool reason had to take that shape and try to make sense of it. Because at first, nothing. Have you ever had an idea or something pop into your mind that you just couldn't shake? And it just bugs the daylights out of you? Or something you're reaching for up here and it's just outside your grasp. I'll be lecturing along in a class, something I've taught for 30 years. And that train of thought will East Palestine, Ohio has nothing on this. That sucker just totally derails. And I'm like, and I'll force myself to try to remember for the next couple hours. Gone. I'll be cooking dinner, doing something later at home. 8 hours later, there's that name. A name everybody would recognize, How? So, Theseus goes on. More than cool reason ever comprehends. Why? Because cool reason is logical. It's looking for steps. It's making sense. The lunatic, the lover, and the poet. So before he just talked about the lunatic and the lover, now Shakespeare brings another person into this kind of group of people. Personally, I think Shakespeare's talking about himself. You got to be somewhat crazy to do what Shakespeare did. to have all these ideas. Lover, read the sonnets. Definitely a lover. Poet, yeah. The lunatic, the lover, and the poet are of imagination all compact. That is, they're all made by the imagination. Their essence, their atoms, so to speak, are the imagination. The imagination is what makes them what they are. Here's some examples. One sees more devils than vast hell can hold. That's the crazy person. Crazy people, I mean certifiably, crazy people often think what about the rest of the world? It's out to get them. There are people, psychotic or psychosis. People are out to get them. He's talking about they see devils where? Everywhere. Not just those in hell, so to speak. The lover, all as frantic, meaning just as crazy, sees Helen's beauty in a brow of Egypt. Helen's beauty, Helen, the face that launched 1,000 ships, the cause of the Trojan War, the wife of Menelaus, who's captured, supposedly, by Priam of Troy. She went with him willingly, okay, according to the myth. That causes the Trojan War. The essence of beauty. The lover sees Helen's beauty in a brow of Egypt. You got a little gloss down at the bottom. Face of a gypsy. No! That is a blankety blank stupid gloss. It doesn't mean a gypsy. The only reason they say gypsy is, oh, look, it has GYP. It's utterly asinine. A brow of Egypt is a dark-skinned person. North African. Now, that may mean black. It might not. It could be dark-skinned like Arabian, which is not black, but is still darker skin than lily-white Caucasians. Bear in mind, image of beauty in Shakespeare's day, that I've talked about before, the ideal of beauty is this kind of white. Notice, not the same kind of white, not the same kind of white, definitely not the same kind of white. Nobody matched this ideal of beauty. Okay? But what does the lover see? In a dark complexioned person, the pinnacle of beauty. Hermia, by the way, she's described as dark complected, tawny tartar. She's not white. Helena, oh, she's your swimsuit model. The whole 9 yards. Okay? So, the lover sees Helen's beauty in a brow of Egypt. That's telling you how crazy that lover is. And the poet's eye, in fine frenzy rolling. The rolling eye, it's an indication of lunacy. Eyeballs rolling in the face. Does what? Glances from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven. Notice where it glances first. Up there. The person's head's in the clouds, not down here among where everybody lives. And as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown. The imagination does what? It bodies forth. It embodies. It incarnates the forms of things unknown. That is, it gives form and shape to things not known. The poet does what? The poet's pen turns them, those forms of things unknown, to shapes, and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. For example, Athens, Theseus, Hippolyta, the Hobbit, Harry Potter. What does the poet do? Why does the poet, and by poet, all Shakespeare means is writer. Why does the poet write? Why does Shakespeare write Hamlet? Why does he write A Midsummer Night's Dream? Where does Midsummer Night's Dream exist? Whether you want it to or not, it now exists here, and I can go all the way around the classroom. Try as hard as you will to forget Midsummer Night's Dream, parts of it are going to bubble up in your mind at some point in the future. And you're going to go, damn that Sherman, even more so with Hamlet. Okay? Why? Because the poet has taken something that exists up here in his mind, and he's transferred it to your mind, into all of our minds. Where does Hamlet or Bottom live? Okay? He's taken forms of things unknown, shaped them, and gives to airy nothing. What's the airy nothing? Nick Bottom. Is about as airy a nothing as you can get. And does what? Gives it a local habitation and a name. Such tricks hath strong imagination, that if it would but apprehend some joy, and this is where this little speech gets more deep than I can go into. I mean, this is really bottomless, philosophical depth stuff. It gives, if it would but apprehend some joy, and again, apprehend versus comprehend. Apprehend, reach out, take hold of. If the imagination would take hold of some joy, it does what? It comprehends, it understands that if it can take hold of some joy, there must be what? There must be some bringer of that joy. In other words, there must be something behind that idea. There must be something that made what popped into J.K. Rowling's mind pop into J.K. Rowling's mind. Something put that idea in her mind. Something told J.R.R. Tolkien to, around there lived a hobbit. That's Shakespeare's point. He's saying no ideas are caused, or he's suggesting, no ideas are caused simply by the electrical chemical reactions going on in our minds. There's something more. And Hamlet is really going to bring that out. Go back to Hamlet. Okay? Is not this something more than fantasy? Meaning imagination, daydreaming. Okay? Did they touch the ghost? No. Did they hear the ghost? Did the ghost speak? No. Could they smell anything from the ghost? Nope. What is the only perception they had of the ghost? Sight. Okay? Explain this, Horatio. Before my God, I might not disbelieve without the sensible and true avouch of mine own eyes. I wouldn't believe it had I not seen it. But because he does see it, he does believe it. In other words, his sight apprehended it, and now the mind has to start dealing with it. What do you do with things you see and do not understand? I was telling my first class. I was reading an article just before my first class about one of the naval aviators who's gone public with things he's seen. Talking about one of his squadrons, 2014 off the coast of Virginia. One fighter pilot here, one fighter pilot here. They're in F-16s, not meaningless pieces of technology. I mean, all kinds of sensors. And suddenly, out of literally nowhere, this thing comes up right between them and hangs with them as they're flying along 400 or 500 miles an hour. And this thing is a black box in a see-through sphere, like a ball, glass ball. And as they move, it moves with them. And they take off and they come back and the thing looks like it just stops dead in the air. When there's 120 mile knot winds blowing, that's like 150 miles an hour. And this thing's just, and he's like, what is this? It apprehends, but it doesn't comprehend. Okay? Is it not like the king? I know it's 10:05. Like the king. Look at Horatio's response. As thou art to thyself. How are you to yourself? Louder? The exact same. I am myself, right? What's Horatio's point? It's not like the king. That is the king. Okay? We'll stop there. Pick up. We'll skip a bunch when we come back, but finish through Act 1. I'm probably going to put up today, because I don't think I have, a quiz over about the last half, like Acts 3 through 5 of Midsummer Night's Dream. You'll have at least a few days to finish it.